It is the beginning of a historic dawn in the Middle East. Those words from President Trump today after brokering a peace deal between Israel and Hamas that finally returned hostages back to their families. Good evening, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Vargas. The president is now on his way back to Washington after his whirlwind trip to Israel and Egypt. It is a day the world may remember forever as a turning point in the Middle East. For families of the hostages held by Hamas for more than 2 years, it is certainly a day they will never forget, one filled with immense joy and tears. Hamas freed all 20 remaining living Israeli hostages today as the first part of a ceasefire deal with Israel. Among them, Avi Natan Or. 2 years ago, he was separated from his girlfriend, Noa Argamani, when Hamas terrorists kidnapped both of them at Nova Music Festival. Israeli soldiers rescued Argamani in June of last year. Today, she and her boyfriend finally reunited.
نور جماني حبيبتك حبيبي
The ceasefire also requires Hamas to release 28 hostages who died in their captivity. Hamas released just 4 today, all of them in coffins. The IDF brought their bodies to the Forensic Institute in Tel Aviv, where they will undergo an identification process. It's unclear whether the terrorists even know where all the other bodies are. Meanwhile, in exchange for dozens of hostages held in Gaza, Israel released nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners. Hundreds of Palestinian prisoners arrived in Red Cross buses in southern Gaza. Others were taken to the West Bank. In Israel today, President Trump met with formerly freed hostages and their families at the Knesset, Israel's parliament. He heard from Or Levy, who was released in February after 491 days in Hamas captivity.
I want to say that today, to see everyone come back gives big closure. I just want all the deceased ones to come back as well.
Trump became the first president since George W. Bush in 2008 to speak at Israel's parliament. He praised Israel for winning this war and even asked the Israeli president to pardon Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who was on trial for fraud, bribery, and corruption.
Hey, I have an idea. Mr. President, why don't you give him a pardon? Give him a pardon.
Now, this ceasefire isn't a done deal yet. There are still questions over where the remaining dead Israeli hostages are, if Hamas will actually give up its weapons, and who will control Gaza when the dust settles. But at the peace signing ceremony in Egypt today, in front of more than 20 world leaders, President Trump expressed confidence this peace will last.
This took 3,000 years to get to this point. Can you believe it? And it's going to hold up, too.
Let's go right now to NewsNation's Robert Sherman, live for us in Tel Aviv. Robert, what a day in Israel. It must have been amazing to be there to witness all this, but there is still, of course, so much work to do.
I mean, just seeing the way that the energy transitioned throughout the day, Elizabeth, because in the early morning hours, there was hope, but there was this lurking feeling amongst many of these hostage families that something in the 11th hour might go wrong, because we have seen so many of these deals collapse again and again and again. Up to the very moments that you saw those hostages returning, you had people across the country glued to their television screens, watching, praying, hoping that this would all come together. It's that word hope that has really gotten these hostage families throughout this day and throughout the last 2 years. For the mother of Alon Ohel, for example, she hoped that one day she would hear her son's whistle again, because that's what he would do every time he came home, whistling through the front door. She will now be able to hear that whistle again. He's home. For the family of Guy Gilboa Delal, they hoped they would be able to take him to Japan one day because he was a lover of Japanese anime. That itinerary can now be booked. It's hope that's gotten these families through all of these dark days here in Israel. The president saying there is light ahead, but also much work to be done. Here's what he said.
Gaza's reconstruction requires that it be demilitarized and that a new, honest civilian police force must be allowed to create a safe condition for the people in Gaza. As I said earlier, I intend to be a partner in securing a better future.
The president says that he wants to see Gaza rebuilt. He wants to see the enclave flooded with aid. And he also wants to see these phase 2 conversations carry forward. Governance, demilitarization of Hamas. He says the discussions are already underway. What I would say, Elizabeth, is that for the first time in 2 years, we're hearing people speak about the future. It's been exclusively about the present, about the hostage situation, about the ongoing war for the last 2 years. There's a saying that they have on the ground here that October 7th may have happened more than 2 years ago, but October 8th still has not arrived. For the first time in 2 years, people can see the dawn of October 8th on the horizon here. Elizabeth.
Amazing. Robert Sherman, live in Tel Aviv. Thank you. Let's bring in our panel now. Michael Oren is the former Israeli ambassador to the United States. Nick Mulvaney served as President Trump's chief of staff in his first term. He's now a NewsNation contributor. Great to have both of you here. Ambassador, I still watch these images and they bring me to tears. It was an extraordinary thing today, what happened in Israel. These reunions were so moving. You said there's an unwritten covenant that Israel will do everything in its power to free soldiers or civilians captured in battle, and today it finally happened.
It's true, Elizabeth, and I'm still deeply moved. I've seen these pictures repeatedly all day long, and every time you show them, it brings me to the verge of tears. And I know so many of these families personally. I also know 2 of the families who received the remains of their loved ones today, and there are now 24 families who are still remaining to have not received the remains of their families, and that is a continuing agony for all of them. We have to keep that in mind as well. But this is a very joyous moment for these families. It is a moment of triumph for President Trump and his team, and I believe it's a breakthrough moment for the entire Middle East. Yeah,
two of those families, those hostages who are presumed dead, are American citizens. Their families have been on this show a lot. There's a real question, Ambassador, tonight as to where are the remaining dead hostages and why and if they'll ever even be returned.
Well, keep in mind, Hamas is a terrorist organization. It's not an honest broker. Hamas engages not just in physical terror, but also in emotional and psychological terror. And the way they can keep Israel in a state of emotional terror, of being terrorized, is by denying the closure to these families. And it is exquisitely painful. I know it's very difficult sometimes for people not living in Israel to understand this covenant that we have with our people that will do everything to redeem the hostages, whether they're living or dead, by the way. There's not like an extra premium put on living hostages at the expense of non-living hostages. So the big question, it's very much connected to the major issue, which is how do then we move to phase 2, which is the president himself said, is the disarmament of Hamas, getting Hamas to give up its guns, because the other 19 or 18 points on that 20 points cannot be implemented as long as Hamas remains in Gaza and remains armed.
Mick, President Trump was hailed throughout the Middle East today for this achievement. Here's a look at the cover of Time magazine with the words, "His Triumph." The Washington Post editorial page called it, quote, "a generational accomplishment."
How is it not? I mean, it's a little bit surprising to see that level of accolade coming from those outlets. But it's also nice to see something a little bit objective. This is something that many, many American presidents have wanted. The Biden team was not able to do it. This is a tremendous success, even if it falls apart, Elizabeth, even if it lasts 48 hours. And I hate to sort of be negative about it, but even if that were to happen, it would still be a huge success because he got the living hostages home. There's so much good that has happened because of what the Trump administration has done here. I think the arc of history has now changed closer to a long-term peace. Iran is no longer the bully of the neighborhood. There's so many things that have happened positively that bear well for peace in the region for years to come. Ambassador, you said today happened. This ceasefire and the hostage release happened because President Trump was willing to exercise what you called brute muscular power in a way that no previous American president had. What do you mean by that?
Well, on the contrary, previous presidents have said they're not going to use power, brute or otherwise, in the Middle East. And the Middle East is an area where power is respected. And the fact that the president was willing to project power, first against the Houthis in Yemen, then most effectively against Iran, gained him tremendous leverage and respect in the Middle East. That, combined with the personal relationships which the president has established with leaders throughout the region. His envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, have personal friendships throughout the region. Diplomacy is like anything else in life. It's 90% it's personal relationships. And previous administrations, keep in mind, whether it's the Obama administration, the Biden administration, almost didn't talk to Prime Minister Netanyahu, didn't talk to other Middle Eastern leaders like the Saudis for a long time. And you can't turn around and not use power and not develop these personal relationships and expect to have leverage. You're just not.
Well, I think President Biden talked to him a lot. He just didn't have the effect that President Trump ended up having.
Well, for 2 years before October 7th.
Got it.
If you remember, Benjamin Netanyahu and the Saudi prince were persona non grata at the White House. And that's not the case with this team. This team has actually gone out and established these very close rapport and trust with these disparate leaders. Look at these 20 points. You get countries here, Turkey and Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Indonesia, Pakistan, that don't agree with one another, much less with Israel. To get them to all sign on these 20 points is a work, I think, of almost unprecedented diplomatic elegance.
Mick,
and it'll go down the history books.
Mick, the ambassador brings up Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. I was fascinated by a report today that came out that said that both Witkoff and Kushner met personally with the 4 leaders of Hamas to get this deal over the finish line. That's extraordinary for 2 people of their stature, 2 men who are Jewish, to do this, to personally meet with them and guarantee that Trump will enforce this 20-point plan.
Yeah, what I think a lot of folks have forgotten about, Elizabeth, is the work that Jared Kushner did on the Abraham Accords during the first Trump administration. He's had relationships there now for a long time. I'm glad to hear the ambassador articulate it much better than I ever could. But what he said was, look, you have to build up credibility. You have to build up respect. And that's what the Trump administration has been able to do. And I do come back to the same thing that President Netanyahu said today in the Knesset, was that I think the turning point here was the attack on Iran. I think not only was it the turning point for this particular discussion, for these negotiations on Gaza specifically, I think it's the turning point in the region. That's where the arc of history changes more towards a chance for having peace, because Iran, the bully in the neighborhood, has been defanged because of brute American military force that so many people were afraid to use before. So, look, what do they say? You know, the best way to prepare for peace is to prepare for war. And Donald Trump actually was able to accomplish something that many previous presidents were unwilling to do. And I think we'll pay the benefits of it now for a long time to come.
All right. So, Ambassador, you've alluded to this already. What does happen next? The ceasefire still holds as of this hour, but Hamas is still in Gaza. So far, Hamas has not given up any weapons, and it still has access to 2/3 of its network of tunnels. We're talking hundreds of miles of tunnels underground. As you yourself said, giving up arms and surrendering goes against the DNA of Hamas. How do you force them to do this?
Well, I don't think there's a major Israeli military option at this point. The Israeli army has pulled back from 47% of the Gaza Strip. The population of Gaza, of northern Gaza, has basically streamed back to their homes. So that's now you have that human shield in place for Hamas. But there are numerous tools at the disposal of President Trump and his team and our allies in the region. What are those tools? You deny cash and arms to Hezbollah. Now, they had free flow of cash from Qatar in the past. They had arms flowing in from Egypt across the Egyptian border in the past. That's going to stop. Most importantly, Hamas cannot get its hands on humanitarian aid. In the past, Hamas would steal up to 60% of all the humanitarian aid. They'd feed their own terrorists. Then they would sell that aid back to Palestinians at an exorbitant price, and that would enrich Hamas. They've got to cut that off, too. So we basically have to cut off all of their oxygen and empower other elements in Gaza, because there are clans, there are militias in Gaza that hate Hamas, that hold Hamas responsible for the deaths of these thousands of Palestinians, for the unspeakable destruction that has gone on there. They hold Hamas responsible, and they're going to there's going to be a comeuppance for them. I tell you honestly, and I'm not being too pedestrian here, I hope, but if I were a Hamas terrorist, I wouldn't walk around with open air with a gun right now.
Why?
Because people are going to go gunning for them. And even though Israel may not have
even though as recently as a couple of days ago, Hamas was, when there was word this deal was going to be made, there were reports that Hamas was going out and finding Palestinians they viewed as being too sympathetic to Israel or anti-Hamas and killing them.
And they, in turn, have been killed. It's been not as been widely reported. But even though I want to say that even though Israel doesn't have an option for a renewal of major military operations, that doesn't mean Israel can not engage in pinpoint surgical operations. And they can target individual Hamas terrorists and individual Hamas leaders. And if Hamas is in flagrant violation of the ceasefire accord by not returning the remains of these 24 murdered Israelis, by not disarming, by not giving up those guns, then Israel, with the backing of President Trump, and President Trump has said this, will be able to exert military pressure, maybe not major military pressure in the form of gun operations, but other measures, certainly will be backed, I think, by this administration.
From Israel, President Trump then flew to Egypt to, of course, celebrate and sign this agreement, which we haven't actually seen yet, the text of what he signed with the world leaders and Arab leaders. President Trump repeatedly, Mick, referred to in his remarks the enormous wealth of the Arab countries that helped pressure Hamas into taking this deal. Not to state the obvious, but those countries are extraordinarily rich, and according to Trump, it is them who are going to pay to rebuild Gaza.
Yeah, what I think he was doing today, both in Israel and then again in Egypt, was getting the other countries invested in the deal. To the ambassador's point, how do you beat Hamas? You choke them off. You choke off all their friends. The Iranians are no longer capable of doing what they were a year ago. The Qataris seem to be not interested in doing it anymore. They seem to be a lot more interested in being friends with the United States. Trump is building this coalition of people to sort of say, look, we want you on the side of peace. And if heaven forbid Hamas breaks the deal, then Trump can go to all of these folks and say, look, you're invested in this deal. Why don't you help us solve this problem? So I think it's classic diplomacy. It's genius, and I hope that it works.
Yeah, I think the world hopes that it works. Everybody's got a vested interest in peace holding. Ambassador Michael Oren, Mick Mulvaney, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
All right. Coming up for us, President Trump says the Middle East is ushering in a golden age and that the reconstruction of Gaza begins now. You can see those bulldozers. They've already started working, removing the rubble. The question, though, is who controls Gaza? What happens to Hamas? We'll get into that. Plus, I speak to a woman who had 5 relatives taken hostage on October 7th and get her perspective on today. It is a truly historic day in the Middle East with sheer elation in Israel and deep relief in Gaza. Thousands of Palestinians are now returning home to areas that have been, until today, completely off limits. Bulldozers are already clearing through the rubble, and there's a lot of rubble. It's estimated that more than 80% of the buildings in Gaza, most of them homes, were completely obliterated during the 2 years of war. President Trump says we're now entering a time of peace and construction.
A new and beautiful day is rising, and now the rebuilding begins.
Now, how long this rebuilding phase will last and under whose leadership is still unclear. Israel and Hamas have not agreed to anything about Gaza's post-war governance. Joining me now is someone with vast experience in the region. Ambassador Dennis Ross is a former special envoy to the Middle East and is the author of the book Statecraft 2.0. He was instrumental in brokering agreements between Israelis and Palestinians under Presidents Bush Sr. and Bill Clinton. And I should note that President Clinton did tweet today that President Trump deserves great credit for this current ceasefire. What do you make of it, Ambassador? Do you agree?
I do agree. No, look, there's no question that President Trump used an interesting combination of leverage. He put himself in a position where it became very difficult for Prime Minister Netanyahu to say no to him. But he also basically got key Arab leaders to decide that it was in their interest to be responsive to him and to show him he had a stake in them. And the combination of that basically produced an interest to generating what we have now. I'll say one other point. I do think what we found is that everybody in the region came to believe the war had to end. So the timing had something to do with it. But I also think the way President Trump exercised his leverage made a huge difference.
How much did Netanyahu's and Israel's isolation on the world stage play in all this?
Well, it should have, because they've never been as isolated as they are now. And in many ways, it was a function of a decision that the Israeli government made early on, which was to be very reluctant to provide humanitarian assistance. And then when they did, at a certain point, to produce a boycott, an embargo. If Israel was going to have the time and space it needed to be able to do what was necessary militarily to truly defeat Hamas, to ensure it could never again pose a threat to Israel, then it needed to show the international community that the target was not Palestinians in Gaza, the target was Hamas. And that was difficult because Hamas used its entire population as a shield.
As human shields.
Israel had to show the Palestinian public was not who they were trying to publish. And they didn't punish them. They did not do that well enough.
The next phase of this peace plan is really the incredibly tough one. Phase 2 calls for Hamas to disarm and for the IDF to withdraw even further from Gaza. And of course, key here, sets up who will govern Gaza. Let's remember, 2 million people, plus or minus, live there. If Hamas did everything, they ran everything in Gaza. So if they're no longer running everything, who is?
I think we have to look at this from two standpoints. One is, who's the day-to-day administrator of Gaza, which is actually easier to resolve than does Hamas have no coercive capability at all? That's where the issue of disarmament comes in. The notion of a board of peace is an umbrella group. There was, throughout the Biden administration, at least in the last year of it, there was a lot of work done with some of the Arab states, with the Israelis, to talk about some kind of humanitarian council that could be an umbrella group over a technocratic day-to-day administration, meaning a technocratic group of Palestinians. Very much that kind of an outline is going to be employed here. But again, it comes back to what you were really talking about. There's a linkage here between disarmament and Israeli withdrawal. If there isn't disarmament, then you're not going to have Israeli withdrawal. The war doesn't end if the Israelis are not out of Gaza. And reconstruction in Gaza is impossible if there isn't demilitarization, because nobody, including the Saudis, including the Emiratis, including the Qataris, those who the president was referring to, who had enormous wealth, no one will invest in Gaza if Hamas can do this again.
Yeah.
So demilitarization is essential. And that linkage, demilitarization for withdrawal, that's the key. So how do you define how much is enough for each phase? Because it's supposed to be 3 phases of Israeli withdrawal. And who's going to define it? Who's going to monitor it? Those are questions right now that have to be sorted out.
Yeah, you can't go door to door and say, are you Hamas, give me your weapon. We have hundreds of miles of tunnels that still exist beneath Gaza, many of which have been hiding weapons and arms for many, many years. Finding and unearthing all this weaponry is a Herculean task.
It is. Now, to be fair, the Israelis have destroyed a lot. But having said that,
they've only destroyed a
is,
third of those tunnels underneath Gaza.
right, but they've destroyed most of the military infrastructure.
True.
The military infrastructure was separate in many cases from the tunnels you're referring to. They were in tunnels for sure, but the key military infrastructure, when I say that, military production facilities, weapons labs, that they mostly destroyed. But you put your finger on it. Who has the intelligence and who then has the personnel, who has the expertise to go in and determine, all right, this much is being turned over, this much is sufficient for this phase. But I would even say, Elizabeth, what's the end point? Because there's not gonna be every gun. You're not gonna get every gun in Gaza. So what is the point that's sufficient?
Well, we will find out soon. Ambassador Dennis Ross, really great to have your expertise. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it on this historic day. All right, coming up for us, I'm going to speak to a woman who had 5 relatives kidnapped and held hostage by Hamas. She has a message for those people released today about the long road of recovery facing each of them.
Wednesday, Chris Cuomo, Bill O'Reilly, Stephen A. Smith, and more.
Join us for a nationwide conversation.
Cuomo, live from the Kennedy Center, the NewsNation Town Hall, Wednesday, 8, 7 Central.
For a night of television you cannot afford to miss.
Only on NewsNation, news for all Americans.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
Tears of happiness, hugs of joy for 25-year-old Eitan Moore and his family. An emotional reunion that was played out again and again today as 20 living freed hostages were reunited with their family and friends after 738 days in captivity. Eitan was working as a security guard at the Nova Music Festival in southern Israel when he was abducted by Hamas terrorists on October 7th. His parents credit their son's incredible social skills, they say, as a key to his survival during those harsh months of captivity. The release of the hostages marks a jubilant time. It's a moment these families have imagined and waited for night and day for more than 2 years. But there is a long road ahead. All 20 hostages will now have to navigate their re-entry back into society, and that's a lot easier said than done. It's something Israeli hospitals have been preparing for, understanding that today's captives may be in far worse shape physically and psychologically than those who were freed earlier. Some medical centers have assigned each hostage their own doctor, their own psychologist, their own social worker, all to help in their recovery. My next guest has seen this entire process up close. Abby Ahn had 5 members of her family kidnapped by Hamas on October 7th. 3 were later released after months of captivity. 2 were killed. One of them, her 80-year-old cousin, another a child who was just 12 years old. Abby Ahn joins me now. So great to talk to you. What was it like watching these reunions today, especially because you've been in that position?
Thank you for having me. It was incredibly emotional. I have been crying all day long and just kind of glued to my phone, watching videos over and over. And it's something you have been dreaming about for 2 years, to see every single last living hostage reunite with their family members, to see them walk on their own feet, to see them smile and hug. It feels almost unbelievable, but everything that I think I and the entire country have been waiting to see.
You were in the position of being one of the family members waiting, hoping, praying for your loved one to come home. If you can describe to me the emotions, as I have watched these reunions today, I have thought about what each of them must be feeling as they walk down a hallway, knowing that on the other side of that door is their son or their sister or their father, someone that they love desperately and have waited 2 years to see.
I think Israel has done a surprisingly excellent job of helping people prepare. This kind of captivity we've never seen it before. So there, as you mentioned before, there's just a lot of trauma response doctors and psychologists, not just for the hostages, but also for their families, because trying to support someone that's gone through this kind of trauma is extremely complex, and the people around them need to be well prepared as well to understand that there's a long road ahead for physical rehabilitation, mental, emotional. All of those things are going to take a lot of time. There's initial elation and a lot of work in the future for all the families.
What comes after that initial elation? What happened with you and your family members in those first days, weeks, and months after they were freed?
Trying to find a new normal, trying to figure out what your days look like, I remember Ofer saying when I saw him the first time he came out of captivity that everything he did would be something he wanted to do. He would never again have a closet full of clothes that he didn't need. Every purchase, every activity, everything would have some sort of intention behind it because he felt like he had been granted a second chance. And so I think that it's figuring out what your new normal is going to be and what your value set is and how you want to live that to the utmost.
When your relatives came out, did you actually ask them the details of what they had been through, or did you wait and let them volunteer them?
Volunteer. I feel like my feeling was I want to let them take the lead. I want to show up if they want me. I want to be supportive if I can. And also, I in no way want to crowd or overstep. I feel like you want to be very sensitive in these situations. And when they share, I pay attention and I listen and I support, and I can also step back when necessary. I think that there's a lot of navigating.
Yeah. I know that we can all use our imaginations and think that if I were a released hostage, a hot shower and a hot meal would be the things I would, really enjoy because I hadn't had that for so long. What are some of the other things that surprised you about your loved ones once they got out that they really cherished and held on to?
I think for Ofer, he was a big bike rider. So being able to get a bike and ride with his team again.
To feel the sun on his face, I'm sure, the fresh air.
Yeah. And just to do this thing, he says that he is a man of the earth. So to be kept underground for 14 months was unbearable for him. So just to put his feet on the ground, he said to get in a car and drive to the mall because he felt like it. These things, you don't have your basic freedoms. And so to be able to access basic freedom, to eat the food that you want, to sleep however and when you want, those kinds of things. As you said, a warm shower for sure.
Abiyaan, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is such an emotional day for everyone, I think, in the nation of Israel tonight. Absolutely. I appreciate you joining.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Thanks.
Coming up for us, we are going to switch gears because there is other news that is happening today, and namely this from the sports and, court. Former NFL quarterback Mark Sanchez is finally breaking his silence about that incident that left him stabbed and an elderly truck driver seriously hurt. We're going to get into all of that in a moment. Meanwhile, SpaceX launches its Starship mega rocket. Can it get to Mars within a year? We're hearing for the first time tonight from former NFL quarterback Mark Sanchez. He was booked in the Marion County Jail in Indiana on Sunday, where this mugshot was taken. Sanchez was somber as he left the jail after getting that mugshot. He faces felony charges for his alleged role in a stabbing incident involving a 69-year-old truck driver last weekend.
I'm focused on my recovery, and I want to see my wife. I want to see my son, my 2 baby girls. There'll be a day to answer all these questions, and unfortunately, today is not that day.
Sanchez went to jail after being released from the hospital where he'd been treated for injuries in the October 4th incident, a Fox Sports analyst. He faces a felony count and 3 misdemeanors for allegedly stabbing a truck driver named Perry Toll. TMZ released stunning new surveillance video that it acquired showing Sanchez in the minutes both before and after the attack. The video begins showing Toll's truck turning into the alley where the alleged attack took place. 7 minutes later, you see Sanchez walking down that same alley, a bit unsteady on his feet. About 90 seconds later, Sanchez comes back, mysteriously walking in the opposite direction. 5 minutes goes by, And then Sanchez returns yet again. At one point, another person walks past him and gives him kind of a funny look, but keeps going. Then Sanchez jogs into the alley toward Toll's truck. Police say this is when Sanchez pulls Toll out of the truck and begins fighting with him. You then see Sanchez walk out of the alley, his shirt stained with blood. Police and firefighters arrive minutes later. Toll is wheeled out on a gurney, and Sanchez is hospitalized as well. Toll is later shown in a hospital with some very serious injuries to his face. Now, all of this is pretty shocking video, but it does little to answer many questions surrounding this perplexing incident. We're joined now by Nima Rahmani, former federal prosecutor and president of the West Coast Trial Lawyers Association. So, Nima, Mark Sanchez has pleaded not guilty. Given that almost this entire incident was recorded on several security cameras in the area, what could his defense be?
It's going to be a very difficult defense, Elizabeth. And like you said, the video doesn't lie. And not only is there video in this case that law enforcement has reviewed, there's independent witnesses as well. So, you know, you may want to argue self-defense in a case like this because Sanchez was pepper sprayed and then stabbed. But under Indiana law, it's very difficult. If you're the initial aggressor, you can't avail yourself of self-defense unless you actually retreat and communicate that withdrawal to the person that you initially attack. So it's going to be hard. I fully expect to see a plea in this case and a civil settlement.
Several of those witnesses and the video show that Sanchez was behaving oddly that night. We see him in the video sort of wandering around alone. It's very late at night on a Friday. Witnesses and video show him doing what appears to be wind sprints at midnight Friday, right before the attack happened. I mean, it looks like somebody who's under the influence of something.
It does, and that's according to law enforcement as well. And they said he couldn't even remember what happened except for reaching for a window. So, you know, the fact that he's really sprinting at 12:30 at night when he's supposed to cover a game the following morning appears to be under the influence of alcohol. Obviously, there are these videos of him acting erratically. We can only speculate as to whether it was alcohol or something more than that, but certainly not a good look for Sanchez. It's not just the criminal case, not the civil case, but again, he has a whole PR team that's probably dealing with the fallout of this.
Last week, I spoke to the prosecutor in this case about the possibility that Sanchez might have been drugged that night since his behavior was so odd and whether that could play a factor. Listen to what he said.
Yeah, so one of the things in the state of Indiana is you can actually upgrade the battery charge from a level 5 felony to a level 3 felony if you have what is known as permanent or protracted loss. And that's one of those situations where you're looking for a healthcare provider, a doctor in particular, to be able to provide that diagnosis and say, what's the long-term impact of these injuries and how is it going to impact the victim? And so those are our conversations that we'll have with the treating physicians, the doctors involved with this in this case, and that'll help us make that ultimate charging decision.
Okay, well, that was a great soundbite, but not the one that we were calling for. The one I called for was the prosecutor saying if he was drugged against his will, that was possibly a mitigating circumstance. In other words, he was, you know, very clearly out of it and under the influence of something, but he didn't drink. Somebody might have put something in his drink, and that could be a mitigating factor if it happened.
It could, and that's that law school hypothetical. Voluntary intoxication, Elizabeth, not a defense. If you consume too much alcohol, you're responsible for your action. But of course, if someone spikes your drink and you don't know what you're doing, that is a defense in the case. So,
meantime,
I don't know.
Yeah, just super quick. There was a very puzzling post from Sanchez's ex and the mother of his 8-year-old son saying, now that everything is out in the open, quote, my priority has always been our son. I chose to remain silent to protect my son. I have always been concerned for his safety and what he is exposed to. Sadly, none of this is surprising to me. That is a strange post and raises all sorts of uncomfortable questions.
Certainly not what you want if you're Mark Sanchez. And I'm not just saying this because I went to UCLA, but there's a history of allegations against him going back to college as well. So that dirty laundry may come out, not just from his ex, if others come forward. That's why I expect his team to try to wrap this up as quickly as possible.
Oh, wow. Okay. Nima Rahmani, thank you so much. Appreciate it. All
Thanks,
right.
Elizabeth.
Coming up for us, we have liftoff. SpaceX just carried out the 11th test flight of its Starship mega rocket, which is the biggest and most powerful rocket ever built. The company says this is a pivotal moment in its journey to creating a truly reusable rocket to take us to Mars. We'll have more on that in a moment.
vehicles pitching downrange. Booster Raptor chamber pressure nominal.
Booster and ship, nominal power and telemetry.
All right, we are about 45 seconds into flight. We're still getting the rattle here at Star Factory. We are seeing 33 out of 33 Raptor engines lit on Super Heavy as it arcs across the Gulf. Coming up next on Max Q.
Max Q.
So at this point, we've passed through that period of maximum aerodynamic pressure. The next thing we're looking forward to is going.
All right, back to our top story now. President Trump is set to land in Washington in a few hours after brokering that historic peace in the Middle East. It was a stunning breakthrough, met with stunning images of families reuniting with loved ones. But there is still a lot of work to do to make this peace last. Chris Cuomo joins me now. Chris, I don't know about you, but I've been watching these images for hours and hours, and I still get all teary and emotional every time I do.
I'm happy for these families.
Yeah.
This took way too long. And tonight I want to address why and what the obstacles are going forward. Bravo to America and the Trump administration for the move of making such a broad coalition for this victory lap. The president had dozens and dozens of countries on hand. Not that they were all relevant now, but they will be going forward.
They sure
and that
will
was a
be.
smart move.
Yeah, get
But
them
there are a
on
lot of other
record
things
and
that
on
really,
camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, they were there for the good time. Let's see if they'll be for when they're actually needed. But that was a smart move. But there are other people making clever moves right now, and I'm going to call them out because they're part of the problem.
All right, Chris Cuomo, have a great show.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.